What's up? Joe Montgomery here with your educationlawyers.com news update here. I'm wearing a mask. A few problems with these masks. One, I actually don't think this one works. I think this is a surgical mask that I had. I think unless it's an N95 mask, which the 95 means it cuts out 95% of the germs. I think this really is almost useless. Another problem with it is that you have to redo your Face ID. If you're using Face ID on your phone, it doesn't recognize you, so you have to redo it. And I also noticed that I spend more time adjusting and playing with the mask than you probably should if the rule number one, or I guess rule number one is wash your hands. If rule number two is don't touch your face, having to play with a mask is not a great idea. So I did have a bunch of these for what they're worth. I'm gonna donate them to a local hospital in case they can be helpful there. But if you don't have a mask, from what I've read on the CDC's own website, they said that the mask isn't as important as just staying home. But anyway, I'm gonna take this off for now, and let's get started with today's update. And today's update is gonna focus on the digital divide. And the digital divide is something that we've spoke about extensively because really the further we go with trying to provide online education, cyber education to our students, the more and more we're finding that the digital divide gap between the rich and the poor, frankly, right? The haves and the have-nots, those that have tech and those that don't have tech, the divide is much greater than we ever suspected. So I have some shocking statistics, some interesting statistics, and also some facts and some steps that other countries are taking. Cyber education faces the digital divide. As school districts across the country are scrambling, frankly, to come up with online alternatives to classroom education, they're faced with a big problem. And that problem is how to provide online access to the school curriculum fairly. And by fair, we mean trying not to put lower income kids and oftentimes minority students or kids with special needs at a disadvantage. Right now, we're facing an unprecedented test of digital preparedness and an unprecedented glimpse, if not straight up view, into the digital divide and how serious it is. So let's start by considering the challenges, and let's get into some facts and some statistics. 1/3 of families in the United States with incomes under $30,000 a year have no internet connectivity at all, versus 6% non-connectivity for households with incomes greater than $75,000. 46% of those families don't own a computer. Let's take a data point close to home here in Philadelphia, and we'll look at Camden, New Jersey. Only 30% of families in Camden have internet access and an electronic device for each student in the home. About 1 in 5 teens aged 13 to 17 said they're often or sometimes unable to complete homework assignments because they do not have reliable access to a computer or internet connection. Black teens and those from lower income households are especially likely to be affected by the digital homework gap. 1/4, 25% of black teens said they often or sometimes cannot do homework assignments due to a lack of reliable access to a computer or internet connectivity. Compare that with 13% of white teens and 17% of Hispanic teens, and however you download it, it's not okay. Around 1/5, or 21% of teens with an annual family income under $30,000 reported having to use public Wi-Fi to do homework, compared with 11% of teens in families with a household income of $30,000 to $75,000. And just 7% of those living in households earning at least $75,000. So those teens who can't afford Wi-Fi rely on public Wi-Fi, and public Wi-Fi often means Wi-Fi from the local library or other public institutions. But most of those places have been shut down during this health emergency, so they have no access to internet. The current school closures as a result of the COVID-19 crisis only serve to highlight the long existing cleavage in educational opportunity for rich versus poor. Yeah, I said cleavage, and that's what we have to think of. There's a divide, there's a gap between the rich and the poor. It's always been there. We're just hearing about it, or not hearing about it, but seeing it and experiencing it here for the first time right now. Mark Duraco, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators, said it well when he said, "This is when the inequality between funding and resources for districts becomes the most prevalent." There's no way to hide it right now, right? So We can read the numbers, we can see the statistics, but when it comes down to it and you need kids to sign on to their online cyber education program and they're not able to because they don't have internet or a computer, then they're absent, right? So there's no way to hide the digital divide right now. We have to face it, we have to face it head on. So in the past week, things are changing fast. Philadelphia made a 180-degree turn, but the question is in what direction? On Tuesday of last week, the Philadelphia School District had directed teachers not to offer remote instruction at all, suggesting that wouldn't ensure equity for all students. District officials cited guidance from the state and federal education departments that said they could not provide instruction to some students unless all students can access it. And since we know all students can't access it, that means no education for anybody. Philly has been handing out paper education packets to families that include instructional materials and workbooks intended for children to work on at home. But what a difference a week makes. On March 23rd, the Philadelphia School Board announced that it's developing a remote learning experience for all students, along with a plan to provide students with devices to ensure equity. So that's great news. We're happy to hear it. The plan, however, was a little bit more than fuzzy. The school superintendent, Dr. William Height, said that the district was in the process of organizing virtual training and resources so that teachers can stay connected with students using Google Classroom. But Dr. Height did not give a target date for making Google Classroom available to Philadelphia students, nor did Dr. Height say anything about expanding broadband availability to the student population or ensuring that children had appropriate devices to use. Now, I don't know that it's all on Dr. Height's shoulders. It sounds like a great time for Comcast to step in, since if anyone has the ability to make sure we all have internet in Philadelphia, it should be Comcast, but I don't know. I don't know who's going to take the responsibility, but someone should, and someone has to do it right now. I'll do my part. If you're near 1420 Locust Street, our Wi-Fi is Education Lawyers, and the password is password456. So feel free to log on to our internet if you're close to 1420 Locust. In the meantime, all the district could offer was a new set of K-12 learning guides that would be available for students online beginning Wednesday, March 25th, and in paper form at all 49 school district grab-and-go meal sites starting Thursday, March 26th. Links to all of these locations and directions can be found at educationlawyers.com/COVID. Some administrators and technology experts are innovating. We need innovation. They're innovating to meet the challenge. South Carolina, for example, the education officials in South Carolina started this week to place hundreds of school buses equipped with Wi-Fi in low-income neighborhoods around the state to serve as mobile hotspots for students. The effort is funded by a grant from Google. What a great idea. We have school buses that aren't in use right now, so fill them up with Wi-Fi and open the windows and park them in neighborhoods so all the Wi-Fi can get out and the kids can get access to it. I think that's an amazing idea, an amazing reframing of perspective and a repurposing of school buses that otherwise would have just sat in a lot. So cheers to you, South Carolina. Great idea. Good for Google, though, to set this up. I'd like to see something from Comcast of a similar nature. The idea of delivering internet connectivity to students via buses is not a new idea. The Austin Independent School District in Texas has been putting Wi-Fi on hundreds of its buses to smooth the way for remote learning for some time now. Closer to home, Cherry Hill School District in New Jersey recently gave out 700 Chromebooks to homebound students and plans to distribute another 700 Chromebooks on Thursday for families with multiple students in the home. Nearby in Pennsauken, New Jersey, there was not a Chromebook to be seen. So district to district, we're seeing, again, a tremendous divide, right? The digital divide. From Cherry Hill to Pennsauken to Philadelphia, we're seeing entirely different steps being taken and really resources available to ensure that children and students are being provided with technology, and even teachers as well, right? We need to make sure that the teachers have access to technology as well. If you look at a previous post on our Instagram page, we're doing our part. We're trying to give out Chromebooks to any kids who may be in need. We just ask you to post a video online to enter, and in the video, tell us how you would personally level up with technology. Special challenges faced by special education administrators and students, right? So it's not the same for all students. Certain students do have unique and special needs. As we know, it's a financial and technological challenge to ensure all children access to an online curriculum because many families have limited or no internet access, and there's limited funding available to supply adequate access for them. I think before now, this was not on anyone's bucket list of immediate things to do for students, right? Making sure every student had a laptop. It was a nice idea, and some districts did provide students with technology, but now it's technology or nothing. So all of a sudden, we really have to make this our number one educational priority, providing technology to students. It's a challenge for sure, but the challenge is even greater when programming for children that receive special education supports and services. According to the Center on Online Learning and Children with Disabilities, the lifespan of most devices like tablets and laptops is about, how long do you think? 1 year, 2 years? It's about 3 years. And the instructional materials being used by a school program might not work with older devices. Also, special education is not usually considered in a school district's purchasing decisions for new technology, which results in devices that are sometimes not compatible with adaptive technology that students with disabilities might be using. So while schools and school districts have the frontline responsibility to arrange for special education students to have access to the online curriculum, don't forget that state departments of education are often ultimately responsible for modifying curriculum materials or tools to allow special needs students to access content, right? So it's not just our school districts, it's the state that's also responsible to make sure that our children, and specifically our children with special needs, have access to the technology that they need to further their IEP goals. So what lessons can we take from this? Well, preparedness, right? I don't know that anyone saw this exact problem coming. I take that back, actually. There's a lot of people who saw a flu pandemic coming, but I don't know that we took the threat seriously, right? Like maybe it's like the global warming stuff we hear all the time, and for some it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. For others, they're like, hey, this is really serious, and maybe we don't realize the severity of a problem until we actually face the problem, or at worst, see someone else face the problem, and we can say, well, I don't want that. But really, in our lifetime, there's been nothing like this, right? So it would have been hard to prepare for, but here we are. And we can prepare for the future. So once the COVID-19 gets through all of our systems and we can move forward, and hopefully that's sooner than later, we can take a lesson from this and ensure that we do have a fallback online cyber education program, which is great, right? Because what else does this do? This takes away snow days, right? Instantly. If there's a snow day, it's not a snow day anymore. It's work from home, right? Or if there's some other problem in a school, like for example, asbestos in Philadelphia, where schools have to shut down for significant periods of time to be retrofitted or closed, and students have to find another school. During those times, we can instantly switch to cyber education, right? So having that cyber education fallback is great no matter what. Regardless of this COVID pandemic, we should have that cyber education fallback. So while we're not necessarily completely prepared now, and some school districts aren't prepared at all, we need to take a lesson from this emergency, and we have to make sure that in the future we are prepared for an instant pivot from brick and mortar to cyber. Maybe we weren't as prepared now as we could have been and should have been, but in the future we need to make sure that we are prepared. Joe Montgomery signing off for now, but check educationlawyers.com/COVID for daily up-to-the-minute updates on how COVID-19 is affecting education generally, and look forward to hearing from you in the comments.